Kenny Wells is like a third or fourth generation guy in the mining industry, so his grandfather's great-grandfather's dad. And, it's a family company called Washoe Mining. Washoe's the county where Reno is, up in Nevada. And Kenny inherits the company. His dad dies suddenly, has a heart attack, and he takes over, and at a very hopeful time, quite optimistic. And then things change, At that time period, really, if you go back and look at it, the economy, it was a tough time for commodities. That suddenly, instead of the ball rolling downhill, the ball's rolling uphill. Headwinds, and things don't go well for Kenny. And so we start the movie. You meet the father, played wonderfully by Craig T. Nelson, and actually Craig T. Nelson and Matthew McConaughey look alike, so they're like perfect as a father-son. And the father is giving him his philosophy and saying it's blue skies, Kenny, blue skies. And you hear Kenny's thoughts where he's like, my old man, a legend. It's the last time I saw him alive. And then you pick up 7 years later, and Kenny's walking into a bar, and he's now working out of a bar. Some of the guys you've seen in his office, that were with him with his dad when it was a real company, they're still with him, they're friends and they've stuck it out. But, the plane has just been going, straight into the mountain. He's a guy who has a dream of a gold mine in Borneo, and he wakes up and sells his last possessions and gets on an airplane and flies halfway around the world. That's the kind of guy Kenny Wells is. And I got to tell you, I think that's kind of the guy that Matthew McConaughey is, who's playing him. I think that's why he's so good. I think he's a dreamer, and in the mining business, if you think like, I have nothing and I have a dream that it's out there, that I can find this gold mine in Borneo, and you wake up and you hock your watch, you hock your car, you take another mortgage out on your girlfriend's house, whatever you have to do, that's the type of guy Kenny is. I think what's special about the movie Gold is actually the structure of the film and the structure of what happens in Kenny's journey, which is essentially he has a dream of finding the largest gold mine in the world, right? And a miracle, he actually succeeds. His dream comes true, and it comes true at the end of the first act. It happens faster probably than he could even expect. That's not what the story of the movie is. The story of the movie is what happens after your dream comes true, after you strike gold. What comes next, And what's fascinating about the mining industry, or, as they call it, the subsurface minerals industry, and in fact all natural resource businesses that take place all over the world, what's fascinating is these businesses are surrounded by some of the sharpest elbowed, toughest competitors. You can't trust anyone. And I'm talking whether it's, you have to raise money to get your mine up and going, right? So you go to Wall Street and hit the capital markets. Those guys are like looking at you, literally like you're the biggest chump, you're bait fish that's come along, and they're just going to carve you up. They're saying one thing, and behind your back they're planning something completely different. The character Kay is portrayed by Bryce Dallas Howard. I mean, she's the soul of the film. She's the heart of the film. And she represents something really, really important for Kenny. Is that Kenny, when the movie starts, Kenny has love and he has friends and he has community. And by almost any outward assessment, he actually has some measure of a dream in his life. He has these people that really care about him. Kay loves him, and she loves him through thick and thin. I mean, he doesn't have a pot to piss in. He's living in her house, and she thinks he's awesome, but there's something inside him. I think inside all men who are driven to really succeed in the world, there's something inside him that doesn't feel complete unless he makes that big strike, And so she's watching this from the outside. She watches him go to Borneo and make the strike. She watches him go to New York and have to deal with all those people. She's there for the whole of it. And the whole time she's just saying, this is crazy, don't forget who you are. I love what's inside you. I love what's in here. I love what's in your heart. I've always loved what's there. And you're in deep water, Kenny. And so, Bryce is able to convey that, in this wonderful way. I mean, the look, her eyes, the way she cares about him. Like in all those great adventure movies, you measure yourself against the gods, and then you either survive or you don't. And if you do survive, you usually have a fairly hard-earned wisdom. And when you're really lucky, you sometimes see that like the treasure you were seeking is was maybe in the journey. That the actual gold was the journey you got to go on. You know, I know that I feel that way about making the film. I think Matthew does too, but certainly for the character of Kenny Wells, you know, I think when he gets to the end of this movie, the treasure he's left with is the experience of the journey. McConaughey is an artist, and he's a nice person. He's a great dad. He's a great husband, but he's a real artist. And so when he approached this role, you know, there wasn't anything he wasn't willing to do. You know, and I mean, he made a complete physical transformation. He gained way over 40 pounds. You know, and he didn't do it with like prosthetics. But it was way more than just putting on the weight, you know. Obviously, we changed his hairline, we changed his teeth, he changed his body. But it's just the way he carries himself, you know. It's like what injuries he had in high school from which sporting events, you know. The character of Kenny Wells had a whole litany of football injuries, and you'd see it in the way he walked, you know. He had a whole history of, like, you know, car wrecks and bar fights and just stuff that didn't go right. And Matthew knew every bit of it, and he carried it every day. And it was an incredible performance and inhabitation, even more than acting. I was blown away. For a lot of us, when we get tested at the level that his character's tested, you really discover what you're made of, and it either breaks you in a million pieces or it actually makes you stronger. And I think he comes out the other end stronger. I felt like it was a bit of a fable, you know, like it was a fable of capitalism, you know. I'm from Kentucky, and it reminded me of people I grew up around, you know, in Kentucky, you know, like most people I knew didn't become filmmakers. In fact, nobody became a filmmaker or a painter or a writer or anything like that. They all became, you know, they're small businessmen or sometimes a lawyer or a doctor. And, you know, a lot of like our kind of icons and the people we navigated by where I grew up were people like John Y. Brown, you know, who started Kentucky Fried Chicken with Harlan Sanders. He was like a hero, you know, and I felt like in America, you know, our business people, they're heroes, you know. If for our character Kenny Wells, if something broke just, I'm talking 1 degree differently, he's Ted Turner, he's John Y. Brown. You know, there's books written about him. He's on talk shows, maybe running for president, you know, and I like that. You know, I feel like America, I feel like we rag on business in a way, you know, and a lot of times Hollywood takes pot shots at people who have small, you know, the kind of small business ethic, you know, can be belittled. But this guy in his heart, he's an empire builder.